we skip on to our next topic now. So, now the topic itself is a new perspective, and the perspective is diversity and inclusion can become extinct in our lifetime. While that sounds wild, let's see how that can be done. So, moving on, I forward the mic to Mr. Gavin Moffat and Miss Ingrid Lotse. They are co founders of Hers and His and Join the Dots. Over to you, Mr. Gavin and Miss Ingrid.
So, hello. Without COVID-19, we would not be able to stand here in Johannesburg, South Africa, and talk at a global summit on diversity and inclusion that is being hosted by a company based in India with attendees from across the world. Thank you for joining us. I'm Gavin Moffat from Hers and His.
So Hers and His was born out of a passion for connection. In actual fact, our program is called Cultivating Connection. And our vision is to create gender equality through the world in our lifetime. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, and we don't believe we can do it on our own. But it makes sense, and what we've seen is that things have translated into diversity and inclusion as well. And we really believe that diversity and inclusion can be an extinct term in our lifetime. We will be spending the next 15 minutes giving you insights in why we say that. And my name is Ingrid Lotze.
So, the pandemic took most of us by surprise, and regardless of where you are in this world, you have probably been impacted by COVID-19 in some way or other. While a few businesses may have had these types of things in their business continuity plans, practically nobody expected a shutdown across the world of the nature that we've had, something that has shut down workplaces and cities across the globe. And nobody expected the massive impact that would have on human beings as well.
Technology. So before COVID, the social and business imperatives for diversity and inclusion were actually becoming increasingly clear. The commitment to and the investment on diversity and inclusion were on the rise across the globe. And then, of course, the pandemic happened and everything was put on hold, whether it was diversity and inclusion talks, panels, workshops, plans were halted, calendars were cleared. And we were actually even personally told that it's not important right now, that we're focusing on the essential things. Diversity is a nice to have, it's not essential. The interesting thing is that the spotlight on social and workplace inequity has been even brighter. We're actually, all of us, we're all doing diversity and inclusion work without us even knowing it. It's gotten real. It's in our faces. It's no longer a program. It's especially inclusion. It's becoming who we are rather than what we do. So the thing that's become blatantly obvious right now with the pandemic is, whilst we're all the same experience in terms of having a pandemic, the situations are not equal. And inequality has been highlighted, it's been amplified, it's been put under this giant magnifying glass. And some of the key issues that have risen to the top of the conversation are women in the workplace, and in actual fact, women of color in the workplace is really in the spotlight. Women, income inequality, unpaid labor, race and ethnicity. And since the 29th of May, when George Floyd was killed, Black Lives Matters has really come into the spotlight, and the conversation is squarely on the table. It cannot be ignored anymore. And then, of course, xenophobia has been intensified.
So I'm not sure if you've noticed recently that the term DE&I is being used with greater regularity. its popularity has meant that it appears to be used almost as much as D&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why is that? Because it broadly outlines the efforts of an organization to create a more welcoming environment for people of less privileged identities. The pandemic has changed the future of DE and I because the world has been forced to inclusion due to circumstances. So today, a tremendous amount of human interaction is done remotely. So via Zoom, like we are, Skype, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, and a ton of similar type apps. Suddenly, organizations are having to use technology as a platform to foster belonging and connection and collaboration. Many of the old and biased ways of working and the rules that define those should no longer apply. Much of this is due to the need to prioritize working smarter, more efficiently, and creating effectivity whilst not being face-to-face. Data and knowledge gathering skirts historical systems of inequality, and in some spaces, those previously excluded are being included because diverse thinking has been recognized as an advantage, not an impedance. So inclusion is being practiced naturally instead of just as a tick box. And it is inclusion, with inclusion, that we create an environment where diversity can thrive. Diversity alone, however, cannot impact business outcomes. So you've probably all seen the gender dividend work that's been done over the past couple of years, and now the diversity dividend. The conversation behind this is how this improves a business. We shouldn't really have to talk about this or focus on this, but to be honest, if you look at what's happening around the world and the layoffs that are happening across organizations, diversity is no longer top of mind in the time of COVID-19, and we feel that it should be. So a reminder of the fact that a diversity dividend actually improves business and how it does that, we think is pretty key for most organizations.
So we believe that you actually can't stop this diversity and inclusion train. And through the messiness of gender-based violence, economic collapse, poverty, the crazy politics, polarity of beliefs, some things have actually fallen into place and have accelerated the evolution of diversity and inclusion. And we believe it will become extinct in terms of a term. Why? Because employees, consumers, communities are demanding equality and inclusion. And these issues are impacting the behaviors. And that spans from brand loyalty through to reputation and actually where people choose to work. The companies that are getting it right will have a longer term reputational strength. They will have competitive advantage, and they will be magnetic employees of choice. The successful post-COVID leaders will be high-profile champions of diversity and inclusion. So mentorship, flexible work arrangements, diversity in hiring policies and procedures specifically, and budgets supporting diversity programs will move from a tick box to a must-have. So at a time when everything is in flux and we're expecting change, everybody is expecting change because we have no idea what to expect. Now is the time to empower the workforce to adapt to the policies and procedures that actually encourage diversity. And in fact, in some ways, it's actually become easier. So you can do an interview with somebody who is across the seas. You can have technology that enables remote training. You can have online polls that allow for people to understand where how people are feeling right now. We can actually have anonymous polls as well, so that openness and honesty can come back into the equation. The opportunity right now is that we can become more innovative and creative with how we bring diversity and inclusion back in.
So the pandemic is definitely forcing us to evolve and adapt. It's almost as though this pandemic is insisting that leadership be inclusive. We're learning from the necessary changes that are making a positive impact on the workforce. By way of example, work from home is not just going to go away when the dust settles a little bit. It's here to stay. We've learned that short video meetings are a far better use of time than hour-long sessions, and that we can include the team and people from across the seas and far away for a far more effective outcome. The focus on inclusion has become so big that there are more materials on how-tos, tips, hints, what to do's readily available than there ever have been before. A Google search for how to be an ally yields months worth of reading. So does the term how to be an inclusive leader. In fact, a Google search on D&I during COVID yields more than 4 million results. There's certainly no shortage of information on how to do this better. So it feels as though never before have leaders had a greater need to show up for their businesses, for their teams, and for themselves. In order to thrive in this diverse world that we live in, leaders need to have skills and a skill set that set them apart. These 6 trays, courtesy of Deloitte, of inclusive leadership are an excellent starter for leaders to bring diversity, equity, and inclusion to its rightful place within the organization. And who cannot possibly agree with the fact that commitment, courage, cognizance of bias, curiosity, cultural intelligence, and collaboration would make a significant impact in what a leader can do within an organization?
So this term, COVID-19 positive, makes people shiver in their boots. I speak for myself. But actually, COVID-19 is very positive for diversity and inclusion. So have you noticed how people, not just leaders actually, but everybody is listening and seeing each other better? Now, just ignore the polarity. I know there's all sorts of other uglies in the world right now, but think of the instances that connect that you have witnessed. And there are many of them. A client of ours saw that the warehouse workers were worried not necessarily about equality, but about safety and the safety of their families. And so knowing this, the company set up exclusive transport for their workers. And then they also ensured that the paperwork that they needed, in case they got stopped by law enforcement, was put in place. Morale significantly improved, and it remains high. So it's easier for diverse people to be included. And we've said that a couple of times. And technology allows this. And there are creative ways of actually getting around getting technology to people. It's become clear that diverse teams and diverse team interaction and cohesive work is not only good for the company, but actually for the team members as well. And we've become more aware of inequalities than ever before. It's always been there, but now we've actually been forced to see it and address it and pull it in to what we're doing.
So it may seem pretty obvious, but there are some very simple suggestions that we have for organizations that can help them not unintentionally destroy all the headway that they've made on their D&I strategy. And the reason we offer these is because from what we see globally, many organizations are not keeping D&I in mind with what they're doing. So is your D&I strategy at the forefront of all your human capital decisions at this moment in time? Have you investigated all cost-cutting measures and all efficiency measures before laying off people? How are you making decisions about who to lay off? If you're making decisions about furlough, layoff, retrenchments, is that decision-making body in fact diverse? Who are you going to bring back and when? And who is making those decisions? And do they have an overall view of the organization's D&I strategy and D&I needs? So is it possible that we can use this pandemic as a tool to further the aims of diversity and inclusion? it is possible that in this time of physical and social distancing, we could convince business and society that there is no better strategy for creating a better world and bringing it closer together than diversity and inclusion. And we think that that is the case.
We've had beautiful lessons from COVID-19 around diversity and inclusion. And the first one is that we actually can't put diversity and inclusion back into a box. The spotlight is on who's in the room, and there is more attention being paid to the impact of the things that we are doing. The recent shifts in flexibility and the division of household labor could actually lead to cultural changes that benefit women in the workplace. And this represents an opportunity and an expectation for organizations of the future. Leading with empathy, we've heard this word before today, transparency and understanding will impact success. And what's interesting is that it's not only in business, there is an expectation between human beings for this empathy, transparency, and understanding. And challenging the old traditional approaches and initiatives, now is the time.
I love technology. So we believe that if we work together, we can shorten the time frame that it will take to make diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, and inclusion a forgotten phrase, an extinct phrase. Could this happen within our lifetime? Well, we certainly believe that with all of your help, it could. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gavin and Miss Ingrid, for those insights. And we have a mutual feeling. Even I feel that if we all work together, probably diversity and inclusion can be an extinct word or a phrase in our lifetime. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Thank you.
Thank you. So coming on to questions. Anybody who wants to ask questions to Mr. Ingrid and Miss Ingrid, you have just 1 minute to ask your question.
We'll also be around for a little bit more time, so people are welcome to ask us questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that. That's so kind of you. All right. So moving forward, since there are no questions, we would move forward and take, okay, I think we have a question here. Okay, so Mr. Gavin and Miss Ingrid, we have a question here by Miss Samina. So I'm going to go forward and ask you that question. What is about cultural change in women?
So please repeat that. What?
What about cultural change in women?
I'm not understanding.
That's a very broad question.
Yes. So cultural change within women and how we change our own culture. Is that what they say? What the question is about?
Let me just check.
So what I can do is, and what I can say, if I'm making assumptions in terms of cultural change with women, I do a lot of women's empowerment work, and across the globe, there are women's empowerment initiatives everywhere. I think as a way of us changing in terms of taking responsibility and taking equity and equality, we are moving very, very quickly towards women changing ourselves in terms of stepping forward onto that